Hey guys, welcome back to Talking with Tyler. And on today's podcast, I'll be recapping the Jets' past last game. They ended up in a loss to the Cardinals, 31-6, with my dad who's back again. Welcome to the show, Dad.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so this game was definitely not a good one. The offense was not productive, as usual. Just a typical thing for the Jets. They struggle a lot on the side of the ball. Aaron Rodgers, 22 for 35 for 151 yards. I feel like he did better with his turnovers. He did have that one fumble, but it came on fourth down. But I feel like he still had a lot of incompletions for being a future Hall of Famer. So what did you think of his performance?
Unfortunately, the game was over before it really started. Arizona came down in the first minute and a half of the game and scored. Jets were only able to muster up 3. They came down and scored again. Jets only mustered 3, and from there on out, Arizona just really took it to the Jets, and they looked very lifeless for a team that was coming off a win, a team that was coming off a Thursday night win that had an extra couple days for rest and preparation. Even though they did travel out to Arizona, they just looked flat. And again, I think that has to come down to the coaches. Coaches have to get their teams ready to play. They got to get them ready to travel. And it just did not feel that way. Now, these are professional guys, so the onus is ultimately on them, but it's an indictment on the coaching staff for them not to be prepared for this game. They had the other teams that needed to lose. The other teams that needed to lose did. They would have been sitting in the 1 seed out of a wild card, and they weren't able to get it done.
Yeah, definitely. Arizona played really well, I thought, in this game. Kyler Murray only had incompleted 2 passes. He had 16 straight completions at one point in the game. He had 266 yards, so he definitely was one of the bright spots to this Cardinals offense. But back to the Jets side, I feel like they did. I feel like the coaches did not do a well enough job with running the ball. They only ran the ball 17 times in this game, and only for 79 yards overall. I feel like Breece Hall and Allen didn't get enough reps, and I thought they could have had a little more. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of attempts is really, indicative or predicated on the Jets getting down early. When the Jets get down early and they're down multiple scores, it's tough to really run the ball. They have to throw the ball. They got to put it in the air. They have to, try and get chunk yards. And, I think we've seen the Jets at their best when Breece Hall gets involved both in the run game and the pass game. He did have 10 carries for 52 with the 5.5 average, which isn't crazy. Pretty good, steady. And then he had a couple receptions, had about 4 receptions for 31 yards. So did have total, 80-something yards. But when you look at, what Arizona did, like you said, Kyler Murray had 16 or 17 consecutive completions, which was a record for them. But Brunson, carried the ball really well for an average of 6.5. And James Conner, is a stud. He had 12 rushes for 33 and then had 5 receptions for 80 with a long of 44. And, ultimately yards after contact was pretty incredible. I know that's his calling card, but, T, after watching the game and seeing the recaps and things like that, what did you think about the tackling for the Jets?
It was really poor, especially Sauce and the other cornerbacks. I feel like they were just not really doing well. They're not very handy, and they're not really tackling these running backs.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, that we're in week 10 or 11 now, but felt like some Jets were making some business decisions where they're not really committed to tackling and wrapping people up, and they still have a lot to prove, and they're still playing for pride, and they just looked like they were going through the motions, and not only going through the motions but just trying to protect themselves. And Jets are up against it. They're a bad football team. They're a bad football team. I think they're poorly coached, and that's not a total indictment on Ulbrich, because he was thrusted in a really tough spot. He had to take over after 4 or 5 games. Not a great position for him to do so, but he's also has an opportunity here to show people that he could be a head coach, and he is not really shining there. The defense has suffered tremendously since he's been the head coach, and you hit the nail on the head. I think they had 20 missed tackles, which is just an insane stat.
Yeah, definitely. This defense has been struggling a big time. They only had 1 sack in this game. I feel like they're not putting enough pressure on the quarterback. 2 quarterback hits and 3 tackles for loss. I feel like they're just not playing that well. Tackling is really poor, especially on the run game. Like you said earlier, James Conner had a big game, both rushing and receiving, but more so receiving, 80 yards there. So he's definitely the stud, as you mentioned earlier, for James Conner, Cardinals side. But I did want to bring up one more thing before we get into the studs and duds and the takeaways. Devontae Adams, All-Pro last couple of years. He disappointed me in this game. He dropped the ball 7 times. He was brought in for Aaron Rodgers to have this little connection. He had 13 targets, 6 receptions. I feel like he could have got a little more than that, especially with this connection. It's just he didn't have a great game, but Aaron Rodgers also was under pressure most of the time. 3 sacks on him. So, all in all, I feel like the Jets need to work a lot out on both sides. Ulbrich, I don't know. The coaching staff might need to go after this year. We don't even have Hackett as our offensive coordinator anymore, so they're definitely going to need to find some new replacements for some of these coaches. So let's get into studs and duds now. For my stud, I think it would have to go to, I'm going to say special teams, because the last couple games, we haven't really found a good kicker. Zerline, I thought, I didn't know he was injured, but he was missing a lot of kicks. And we finally had a game this year with no misses. Spencer Schrader, 2 for 2 from field goals. All the snaps are pretty good by Morstead, so I thought the special teams gets this one. For my dud, I think it would have to go to the defense, 31 points. Coming into this year as one of the top-notch defenses in the league, but they just do not look good ever since Ulbrich moved over to the head coaching spot. So who was your stud?
It was really difficult to find one. I really had to really look. I think Sherwood had a great game, or I wouldn't say a great game. Let's say differentiated himself from the rest of the team. 17 tackles, 7 were unassisted. Had a tackle for a loss. He was still throwing his body all over the place, jumping, diving, tackling people. So he was not making business decisions. He was out there and giving it his all. True professional. So that would be my stud. As far as duds, I'm gonna have to cite the coaching staff again. I just feel like every time this team gets the Jet fans hopes up. We're like, man, we played well. We're back in it. Played well Thursday night, and to have an extra 3 or 4 days to get healthy, to get right. You were playing away, but to come out so flat and just uninspired, that's a culture thing. That's a coaching thing. I think, we expect these people as professionals to come out and play. That's what they get paid to do. But there's a lot of guys on that sideline holding clipboards that when your team is unprepared and not ready, I think some of the players talked about they passed the ball a little bit more than they thought, then somebody else said they didn't. I think they're just all grasping at straws, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think they know what's going on. So my dud is the coaching staff, top to bottom.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you there. So now for the takeaways, I'm going to say after watching this game, I think the offense is just really just not playing well.
They scored a touchdown.
Yeah,
They
6
scored
points.
a touchdown. What are you going to, listen, you have Aaron Rodgers, you have Garrett Wilson, you have Breece Hall, you have Devontae Adams. There's not much to talk about. I don't care how good your defense is. If you can't score to more than 6 points and you're a Hall of Fame quarterback and these potential future Hall of Famers can't get into the end zone, there's nothing to talk about. Or nothing to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. But also the defense has been struggling too. Just this whole team in general is just off. It's just really bad. I just don't even know what to say anymore. This game didn't really have a lot of production to it. The coaching staff is definitely in the running for getting a couple guys fired. So, what are your takeaways?
My takeaways, I mentioned this to you about penalties. Jets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 penalties. And just defensive offsides, defensive pass interference, defensive holding, but not penalties out of commission, penalties as just in the beginning of the year, I thought we were penalized too much. I thought we were getting roughing the passers and skirmishes after the plays and different things like that. They were playing with fire. They were they always talk about playing violent, things like that. I just think at this game, I don't think they were playing hard. I've seen a lot of Jet games in my life. I know you've been a fan since you've been born, so 14 years. I've been a fan for 46 years. They played just extremely lackluster, and they looked uninspired and uninterested. So that's my takeaway. I don't want to see penalties, but I want to see something. I want to see some fire. And it just looks like they got down. They knew they were going to lose, and they said, let's just move on to next week. And it's tough when Jet fans like us are invested, not only, monetarily at these games and paying season tickets and buying all the gear and all that other kind of stuff, and that's the product they put out there. That's a tough sell. That's a tough sell being a Jet fan there.
Yeah, I also thought that the warmer weather would help for the Jets playing in Arizona, but didn't show for this game. Just from beginning to end, they did not play well. But I want to also preview a little bit the Colts game coming up. So the Jets are going to be playing at home. The Jets have been playing really well. Not really well, but well at home. Better than they are away. So this is a flex game. It was originally supposed to be a Sunday Night Football, but now they are going to be playing the Colts at 1 o'clock. And the Colts are switching quarterbacks left and right. Last week it was Joe Flacco. Now it's Anthony.
Who won, by the way? Right? Did they win? Didn't you win?
No, they lost.
They did lose. You're right.
I think they're on a 3 or 4 game losing streak. So it's definitely going to be a sloppy game. I don't know if it's going to be very high scoring. But I think it's definitely going to be a good AFC, maybe a wild card game if these two teams turn the tables around in the end of the season. But what do you think about this game? Anything you have to say about it?
I'd like to sit here and tell you that I think the Jets are going to play well and they're going to come out inspired. But based on their track record this year, I think we're going to be in for a long, ugly game. If the Jets score more than 18 points, I will be surprised. Now listen, if they could win 12-9 or something like that, maybe. But I would be, I hope I'm wrong, but I would be surprised if the Jets scored more than 18 or 20 points on Sunday. And I see you shaking your head, but I hope I'm wrong. But I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. Again, we're in the same exact spot where we were years and years and years every year for the last 15 years, 14 years.
Yeah, so the Jets have a lot of work to do. Coming up Sunday, 1 o'clock against the Colts at home. So I'm hoping the Jets play with some fire in them, just something to get a couple points up, a couple touchdowns or something. At least make the game a little more competitive. So thank you, Dad, for coming on. He'll be on for the next couple Jets podcasts. Still looking out for more guests. If you want to come on, shoot me a quick text message. I'm happy to have anybody on to talk some sports. So I want to do another Jets chant. It's just not really working at the moment, but I hope it does soon. Jets, 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 Jets. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Bye, guys.